Okay? Now, third are always irrational numbers. There they are. The thirds, uh, the reason we use thirds is for accuracy. If we're talking about the square root of 4, the square root of 25, the square root of 144, we get rational answers. But there are some numbers that you cannot get rational answers to when you square root them. Like the square root of 3 is not a rational answer. It's irrational. The square root of 17 is irrational. The square root of 44 is irrational. So if we had to do some calculations with those numbers, sometimes it's more difficult when the number inside the square root is bigger. So what we do is we simplify them. Okay? And because irrational numbers go on forever and ever, writing these numbers as square root of 3, square root of 17, square root of 44 keeps the accuracy of that number. Manipulating them now, alright? Now, here are the 3 rules that you need to remember. When you have the square root of a number multiplied by the square root of the same number, the square root of the number all squared, you get that number. For example, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is equal to the square root of 3 all squared, and the answer would be 3. Okay? I can prove that with this second rule that we've got here. Okay? The square root of 3 times the square root of 3. I know it says 2 different numbers there. And what happens is you multiply one by the other under the same square root. But I can use this second one to prove the first one. What is 3 times 3, please, Ola? And what's the square root of 9? And I've used that rule to prove that rule. Okay? But if you have 2 numbers square rooted, you can combine them under the same square root if you're multiplying. Okay? So if I wanted another example, a better one maybe, the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 would be the square root of 2 times 3, which would be the square root of 6. Okay? And, you know, when you're dividing 2 numbers by each other, let's say the square root of 2 over the square root of 3, it's simpler just to say the square root of 2 over 3. And it works in the opposite direction as well. You can find the factors of 6, 2 and 3 and split them like this. You could just square root these numbers individually. So if you have a fraction, if you're square rooting a fraction and what either the numerator or the denominator is a square number, then you can split them. Okay, Ola? Or are you scratching head and growing beard on one part? Okay, champion. Right then, the rules are on the left hand side. Let's try and simplify the square root of 7 times the square root of 7. This is your job now, Ola. What's the simplified version of the square root of 7 times the square root of 7? If you're scratching head and growing 7, correct.